Until 6 o'clock this evening on the East. Kemba Walker fitting back Northeast, but not in New York. In Boston, 4 years, $141 million deal with the Celtics. So, a couple things at play here. And I want to get into what this means for Boston, but I'd be remiss not to get into what it means for Charlotte, who gets, by the way, speaking of, how about just the weirdness of Kyrie goes one way, and now Russell kind of going back where he was, and then Rozier ends up now where you saw Kemba, and the Knicks didn't get anyone yet, but I digress. Charlotte, where they were, and I'll start with you, Wes. How do you make a decision when a guy's been so great for you on and off the court, where you're not willing to do whatever it takes to keep him, and you have so many big contracts with other guys on the team?
Well, payroll matters. Ultimately, there's, one of the kind of untold stories in the NBA is there's payroll budgets for a lot of teams, especially when you're a non-playoff team. And so, in this situation, Kemba is eligible, as we know, for the Supermax. But even if it wasn't the Supermax number, if it was just the traditional max number, his 7 to 9 years at $32.7 million, if they would have signed him to that number, they would have been in the tax. And so Charlotte would have had to make moves to make that decision. So in this current kind of team that after the non-playoff run for Charlotte, I can understand why they make the decision they did. They weren't quite good enough, and they didn't want to lock themselves into a team that wasn't good enough and have no financial flexibility going forward. The question, I think, that we have to look at is why didn't they make a decision at the trade deadline or last year and make a move earlier because they saw this coming? That's the one that's a little harder to kind of figure out.
And teams could have tried to make a deal and then offer Kemba that extra year and at least a sales pitch of a couple of months. But it's just kind of weird to see because now, look, the identity is going to be they're kind of same in the mid-drift, but they don't have a guy who now moves to a team that was looking for all the things, or most of them Kyrie does in the floor coach, but that leadership, that example, that representation. How great of a fit in Boston and with the Celtics is Kemba Walker?
I think a lot of people came out pretty good from this triangle that you were talking about when you consider, oh, we lost this, but oh, we got this. Oh, we lost this, but oh, we got this. They all came out of it pretty good. They can go into the season and say, we're pretty solid at this spot that we could have had a big zero in their hole.
When you look, Sam, at where the Celtics are, the fit was clearly an issue. Number of reasons. Gordon Hayward gets in late. You think of Kyrie being down, and then the minutes were all changed. Why is Kemba the right guy to help make all this work for, tell me if you disagree, a team that is now Jason Tatum's team in some respects moving forward?
Well, just what you just said. I think Kemba Walker's personality is going to allow guys like Brown and Tatum to flourish. It's not going to be, look, when Kyrie walked in that locker room, he walked in having played with LeBron James, having hit one of the biggest shots in the NBA. When you hit the game winner in a Game 7 on the road against Golden State, that says something. Then when you look at Kyrie came with just a different mentality. Here come Kemba Walker. He seems like more of a guy that's going to fit in the group. And that's what Brad Stevens needs. Brad Stevens struggled coaching a quote-unquote superstar. He struggled with that. Now you look at Kemba. Kemba's an all-star, but he's a different kind of all-star. Whereas he's one of those guys that's going to be happy that fit in that locker room with the rest of these players. He's coming from a situation where he's been losing and getting beat. And let's go back to his college days. Kemba Walker is a winner. He won a national championship. So the Boston Celtics and Danny Ainge are banking on, one, he fits in a little bit better personality-wise in that locker room. Two, he hadn't forgot how to win because he won a national championship. And three, the drop-off is not that much. Kemba Walker can go out. Look, he averaged 25 a game. You can put the ball in his hand. He can create a shot for himself or his teammates. So when you look at everything included in Kemba Walker coming to Boston and your Brad Stevens, you got to like it because he's going to allow those other young players to grow and develop. And it wouldn't surprise me. Right now, Kemba Walker's on paper the best player on that team. But in a year or two, it could very well be one of those Tatum or one of those young guys in Brown being the best player. And I think if that happens, and Danny Ainge and Brad Stevens, and that happens, they're going to be okay with that. And I think Kemba Walker, more importantly, would be okay with it.
Well, think about this. I always ask this question, and we don't have enough time to wait because there's really no right answer. Who's the best player Kemba's played with at the NBA level? And you'll hear people say, well, Dwight in that 1 year, and Batum 1 year, and this 1 year, and Marvin Williams. I mean, really, this is going to be the best team he has by far ever played on the NBA level, but it misses size. So Marcus Morris could be out. Al Horford's not going back. Baines is now in Phoenix. So how do you fix that whole thing? Because there's a huge size issue right now. Kemba not the biggest guy, speaking of which, for the Celtics.
Yeah, so Boston's going to find a way to backfill using their mid-level exception, maybe if they work a sign-and-trade and they're able to operate above the cap. Or, maybe they're able to keep Marcus Morris if they, again, operate above the cap and keep his bird rights. And they're also going to have other ways. And the draft may be one. I was a big fan of Grant Williams, who we talked about on draft night. He's not physically tall, but he's going to be able to play as a modern-day big, away from the basket, guard multiple positions, great toughness. I really like that addition as well. And the point that you both were making, this one is critical. If the Boston Celtics are going to be great, their best player is going to have to be Tatum or Jaylen Brown.
Yep.
And with Kemba on that team, that's going to be allowed to happen if it in fact happens. With Kyrie on that team, that probably never could have happened, and that probably put a ceiling on what that version of the Celtics could have been.
A lot of people thought a year ago when Kawhi went to Toronto, what never could happen. He's not going back there. Remember, Paul George never stayed in Oklahoma City. Kawhi, this whole championship thing, if you missed it, happened up in Toronto. And then we thought, okay, maybe he is coming back. But the Lakers with the welcome party. Will he go home? We'll answer that question next.